It's 7:30 and we're back for our second part of our class. And we've got Cody Levy, Texas Game Warden from Cameron County, is our speaker. And as I said before, this is not what he looks like. You'll see in a second what he looks like. He is from Grapevine, Texas, which is up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And he graduated from the University of Texas at Austin in 2014. He's an avid fisherman and hunter, and previously worked as a TV host for hunting and fishing television programs. And he's a recent graduate from the Texas Game Warden Academy in June of 2021. And additionally, another game warden from Cameron County, Mike Gonzalez, is planning on being with him tonight. So hi, Cody.
Hello, how's everybody doing?
We're doing good.
Good.
Glad to see you. And I don't know where Robert found that picture, but I told them you looked nothing like that. So
yeah, that's a good one. But unfortunately, Mike will not be able to join us tonight. We actually had a call to help a stranded boater, so he is out on the Arroyo right now, helping with that situation right now.
So somebody's got to work.
Exactly.
Okay. Robert made you the presenter, so you can share your screen.
Okay. See. All right, is that working?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for having me. I really appreciate it. I honestly feel like for me, teaching in a classroom in a in-person environment is less stressful than me doing this over a Teams meeting like this. So bear with me. I'm a little nervous on this. So, but again, I appreciate you guys for having me. Hopefully, I can impart some a little bit more on some of the laws and regulations as we have here on to you guys as you start with the Texas Master Naturalist. So we'll dig right in. If there's any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to just shout out or anything like that. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or address any comments or anything like that. So I'm easygoing when it comes to that. And like she said, I did graduate from the academy just recently. I've been a game warden for about 6 months, and I'm from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So this area is very new to me, consider all things considering. And as the last speaker said, he's lived here his whole life and is still learning what he doesn't know. And I feel you on that, as I am learning so much about what I don't know down here. So I'm learning a lot and enjoying every minute of it. So we'll jump right in. So as a Texas game warden, and excuse me if you hear my dog trying to scratch at my door. As a Texas game warden, our primary duties are to educate, to deter crime, and law enforcement. We are state police officers, so that means we can enforce any state law throughout the state. That means if we catch you speeding down the highway, that's on us as well, just like it is for any wildlife inspection or anything like that. Our primary focus is, of course, wildlife, our natural resources, the environment, and water safety. Down here, water safety is huge, as we're surrounded by water on the river and in the coast, in the bay, things like that. So that keeps us very busy all year round. So as Texas Parks and Wildlife, our mission is to conserve the natural resources of this state and provide opportunity for future generations. Conserve is going to be a very broad term. There's so much that we can do as game wardens. It can be anything from fish and wildlife inspection all the way to down here we have so much commercial fishing. So it's a lot that we can do on many different aspects. not just fishing, of course, but you see from county to county how our job is so different from what I might do versus somebody does in Houston versus what somebody does in Austin, but and so on. So moving on. Today, let me get through this. We have 3,500 employees in 11 different divisions, law enforcement just being one of them. 90 plus state parks. Funding comes from hunting and fishing licenses, sales tax on sporting goods, boat registration fees, federal excise tax on firearms and ammunition, fishing tackle, and of course, boat motor fuel. So our funding comes from a lot of different ways, and then even more than that, it comes from different organizations as well for us. We patrol out offshore into the federal waters as well, and we're granted by NOAA, another organization, to patrol that into international waters as well. So just another example of our funding. And then that brings me to the Texas Master Nationalists, and what I can kind of educate on this evening. Something I thought was really neat. So TMN Actions comes from a combination of the laws, the rules and regulations that we as Texas Parks and Wildlife have in place, as well as other laws and penal code, so on, as well as ethics. As outdoorsmen, I know myself, when I go fishing or when I go hunting, ethical choices stare us in the face every day. So seeing other people that might not do something the most ethical way, there's always someone that can help educate. And I appreciate y'all for taking that step as well. So as Texas Master Naturalists, excuse me, so as outdoorsmen and enthusiasts, we love to explore, learn, collect. There's so much that even in our parks and things like that, there's so much nature for us to explore and find. The examples here: feathers, eggs, skulls, a lot of big ranches around, so nilgais, things like that, very cool things. There's stuff that we can enjoy and then leave for others to enjoy as well. So as you see here in that picture, naturally inclined to grab things and collect things, but there's also a duty to know what we can and cannot keep from the resource. A great horned owl, tail feathers. A great horned owl, as I'll explain too, is a protected species, and its parts are also protected species, or protected as well. So we cannot be in possession of any of those items as well. Artifacts. Okay, so no question, inquisitiveness and the desire to learn and collect are great qualities. Like I said, part of our outdoor education involves learning what things are and aren't legally protected. So things that are protected: endangered and threatened species, most migratory birds and their parts, like feathers. Exception for things like dove, for example, is it's a protected species, but there's times when we can hunt them. So during dove season, so having those feathers and things like that is not a violation. Same with I'll say turkey as well, which is something I'll touch on a couple times here, because you'll see some turkey feathers in different things. Marine mammals and their parts, dolphins. There's tons of dolphins out in the bay, out in the Gulf, and every so often you'll see them, unfortunately, wash up on the beaches, but that does not give us the right to take any part. Certain plant species. That is something I'm sure most of, like I said, I'm pretty new to the region down here. There's so many different plant species, and so many of you could probably educate me 10 times over on things like that, as I'm not super familiar with those, but always something good to learn, especially in this case when they're protected, when we're talking about what is protected. And the rights of property owners, public and private. Again, we'll get into that a little bit more. That being a big one as far as when we're exploring different areas, we also need to know whose property we're on, as that is our job as outdoorsmen. It's outdoorswomen and outdoors women. So it's our job to know where we're at all times. So getting down to the basics of what are laws just in general. I think everybody knows pretty much what we're talking about. It's, from rules of the road, use our turn signal, speeding limits, things like that. It's just a basic system, of course. We have a lot of laws in this state and a lot of different law systems. So we see from my end, one of my biggest ones that I have to go off is the Parks and Wildlife Code. That governs things like how many fish you can catch, what deer you can shoot, what time of year, bag limits, things like that. That's our number one, of course, as Parks and Wildlife officers. But we also have the penal code, things like criminal trespass that we do deal with daily as well. Transportation code, your speeding limits, your parking laws, things like that. Health and safety code, we get into things like drugs and other things like that. Again, we deal with that on a daily basis as well. The water code, of course, a big thing down here. And the administrative code, which is another big one. A lot of people, when we start talking about bag limits, things like that with the Parks and Wildlife Code, those two go hand in hand, because the administrative code is what gives the Parks and Wildlife Code more of a meaning when it comes to the bag limits. And I have a couple slides which I can explain more on that. So these come from our state constitution. Yeah, so everything starts with our legislative process. So examples, I'm going to pull everything in, I can't do that. So criminal trespass in the penal code, like I said earlier, whenever we're on a hike, wherever we're on, just out for a stroll, anything like that, it is our job as outdoors men and women to know where we're at. So if we're going on, for example, there's a lot of U.S. Fish and Wildlife property around here that we can go take hikes on, things like that. However, usually everything is fenced off, so we know. But there's times when it might be, a fence is broken and you think, okay, I can stroll over to this area too. That might be someone else's personal property or private property. There are really 4 things that'll mark private property. One of them is, of course, a fence. 2 would be a sign saying no, do not enter, something like that. A third is, of course, somebody saying, no, you can't be here, explaining what his property is. And a 4th is going to be purple paint. If you see purple paint in an area, that means do not enter. And something I really didn't know till later in life about that. And a lot of people don't realize it, but if you see that purple paint on fence posts or trees or along fences, anything like that, that's just a good indicator to say, okay, let's turn around and go somewhere else, because this is somebody's personal property. Another example is protected birds. So kind of going back to earlier, that the horned owl feathers. Of course, feathers fly all over the place, so you can see them and things like that. But those are things that we want to make sure, we're not going to pick up, we're not going to keep them, because that is a violation, because those are protected. Basically, without any, there are legal birds that we can take as hunters, turkey being one of them. You'll see guys with, turkey feathers in their hat. If that bird was legally taken, then that is not a violation. There's nothing to say that they can't do that. However, if you see an owl feather or a protected species, then that becomes a violation. And of course, we're talking very minor. Additionally, it is very illegal to kill a gray, horned owl or any owl or protected bird. That's a good violation right there. So we cannot do that. And then Texas Health and Safety Code. drugs, like I was saying, also littering. You see all over the beach that people leave trash. I mean, it's not even on the beach, but everywhere people leave trash. And we have to do our part to take what we came with. It never hurts to pick up a little extra as well on the beach, things like that, but also encourage everybody else to do the same. So getting into laws and regulations, is everybody good so far? Am I talking too fast or going too slow for anybody? Thumbs up. All right.
Sir, I had a question.
Yes.
I'm a teacher and I teach middle school and the kids are always asking me because like I do bird projects and stuff as part of my curriculum. And they were asking me like, well, what happens if we kill a bird, a migratory bird, and what are they going to do to us? And I'm just like, well, it's against the law, just don't do it. But I really don't know what to tell them. Like, what can really happen to them? Is it a fine? Is it jail time? I mean, something that I could share, please, if you have that information.
Yes. So good question. Um, Kids are always very funny when they ask that type of question. So first, I want to say, what are they doing killing birds? If like, how old are they? What are they doing? But if they're so first of all, people have to have a hunting license. If they're going to take a legal game bird, which, for example, dove, a very big season down here. You also have quail, you have duck, you have turkey. Um, Chachalaka is another one. So those are legal game birds. However, there is a season for them. So it could get, I'm not in the business of taking kids to jail, but but to explain to them, it could be quite a few citations from no hunting license to taking a game bird out of season to taking a protected game bird to a couple, where did they shoot it? What did they shoot it with? There's all different types of regulations, which we'll get into, that our Parks and Wildlife Code will explain. For example, white-winged dove may only be taken with a shotgun or archery equipment, which is kind of two very different things, but that's the only legal way to take those birds. So if somebody says, well, I shot one with a slingshot, well, that'd be illegal means and methods, which would be a citation, which it would be a Class C citation, so same as a speeding ticket would, but it comes with a fine and restitution. So it's both a criminal penalty and a civil penalty. So they'd be paying for the fine, which could be anywhere from $25 to $500 for a Class C citation, plus restitution, which depending on what bird they kill, you think about a bald eagle, and that is, I don't know the restitution on that, but I don't want to know because it'd be quite a bit. But talking about your regular dove or anything like that, it's about a white-winged dove is about $100 a bird in restitution.
And I ask you this because like one of my students, he tells me, ma'am, because I every time they come into my classroom, they've got to write like every Monday morning. The first thing they have to do is let me know what they did on the weekend, just for writing purposes, right? So one
Mhm.
of them, he says, he wrote, I'm really sad because when I looked out my bedroom window, I saw some boys shoot a parrot and the parrot landed in my yard and we went after they were gone, we went outside and it was dead. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm freaking out over this. So I said, what, do you know who did this? And he's like, no. And I'm like, well, where was this at? And he says, well, I'd rather not say, but I'm just really sad. And so he didn't want to tell me anything. I mean, and maybe for fear. I mean, if he says something that, maybe they know that they did it in his yard or whatever, but he's like, well, what can happen to them? And I said, I really don't know. I said, I know that, if you were to report them, if you knew who they were, you could probably call Parks and Wildlife and I think they would probably get in trouble. But I mean, that's your decision. But he just was very bothered by it, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I
And
just didn't
hopefully
know what to tell him. I mean, I don't think they would go to jail. I mean, right? I don't think so. I mean,
so I will say a Class C ticket is it you you can be arrested for a Class C citation. However, it's usually no. I will say no. Nobody would usually go to jail for anything like that. Additionally, a parrot, it's similar to like the exotic species around here, like nilgai and blackbuck, things like that. So I'm not sure on parrots. I have not come across that very much. But I would think that might be someone's pet too. I've seen a couple down here as pets.
Well, I mean,
So
if you're new here, I mean, we have the parrot roost over here, where I teach on this side of town. So, there's hundreds of them every night at the park, and I don't know if they're protected or not protected, So I'm
yeah.
assuming he must live around this area, and that's what he saw.
Okay. Okay. Yeah,
Right.
that's good to know too. I did not know that about a parrot roost. So um,
Yeah,
yeah, that
and
would be
that was one thing
something.
that I was trying to get advocated because, I like to go, I do bird photography too, and when I went to the park, Oliveda Park, where they roost every night, somebody was flying a drone and he would fly it towards the parrots where they were in the tree, and the parrots would just, oh my God, they would like fly out by the hundreds. They were freaking out.
Mm,
And then he would send the drone somewhere else. And then there was like 5 or 6 of us out there, and we were like really upset about it. And we didn't know if drones are allowed, it's a state. I don't know if Oliveda Park here in Brownsville is actually like a state park or it's just a city park. But I mean, in my opinion, I don't think anybody should be flying a drone at wildlife like
mm,
that man was doing, intentionally
mm.
doing. And we took pictures, and like we tried to get his license plates and everything, but nobody went and told him to stop because we were all afraid, like we didn't know what he would do to us, so we just kind of like, again, like kept quiet about it. But that would be
Yeah.
something very interesting for us to know, like as just as citizens, if we see that, somebody taunting wildlife with a drone, can we call you all? Can we report them? We don't know. Something.
Yes, and that's a great question. That's also something I'm getting to as far as some scenarios. Definitely feel free to give us a call on that. That is um, something that when it comes down to the ethical side of things, it's
Mhm.
just kind of wrong, as we all know it.
Yes.
Everybody feels that in their stomach. When you see something wrong, you know it, and
Yes.
that's something that really shouldn't be going on, and especially in a city park with tons of people around. Um, so yeah, feel free to, if you come across some different things as I'll discuss later too, you can always feel free to give a game warden a call and just, tell us what's going on. We might have some news or some information about it, and we could give you, well, hey, here's what they're doing. That's fine. This is okay. Or hey, no, that's not okay. We'll be over there. We'll do some investigation on it as well.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, and hopefully that helps too. As far as I hope I didn't go too far into the weeds on some of the citations and
No, that's good though, because they need to know. I mean, it's the law, it's the way it is, and there's consequences for things that you do
right.
that that are not ethically correct. So, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for them, say, "Oh no, it won't happen." No, I am going to tell them, because you kind of want them, if you don't teach them and tell them very young, they're going to grow up thinking that it's okay, and it's not okay.
Yeah,
So, I try to let them know, that the wildlife needs to be protected no matter what it is.
exactly.
And that there are, like you said, there are consequences for stuff.
Right,
Thank
right.
you for that.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And that's what I think is so great about this foundation as well, is that it's people that want to do good by the community, by the outdoors that surrounds us. So educating the public is, like I said, what we do. So if we can impart some information on you guys, and you guys can impart it to everybody else, that's how we can serve our community best. So thank you very much for asking that too. Um, any other questions so far? Okay. All right. Well, moving on to some laws versus regulations. And this will actually explain some of that a little bit more too. So we have, like we already said, our laws, which are, our penal code, our Parks and Wildlife code, our health and safety code versus some of our Parks and Wildlife regulations, which goes in line with Texas Administrative Code. That's what gives us our daily bag limit for dove, our bag limit for fish, our length limits, things like that. So that's what our commission does. 9 commissioners, as you see, that meet quarterly to discuss our regulations for Texas Parks and Wildlife. So for example, our commission, with the freeze last year, as you see, these are actually pictures. The top one is trout. That is actually a picture from Port Isabel. And then the bottom one is from Matagorda Bay. So terrible for our resource, killed about 4 million trout, which really took the brunt of it as far as fish species. Our Texas Parks and Wildlife Commission is the one that said, okay, we are going to enact new regulations for right now because our spotted sea trout took such a hit on that. So we're going to have to enact a new regulation for the time being. That is not what you'd see in the Senate. That's not what you see in Congress, anything like that. That's our 9 commission members for the state of Texas and Texas Parks and Wildlife. Does anybody know what the regulations became after the freeze for that? I think it was about 6-month period. It was, the original spotted sea trout length limit is between 15 and 25 inches. After the freeze, and you could keep 5 fish, 5 spotted sea trout. After the freeze, our Texas Parks and Wildlife Commission met and said, okay, we need to help our spotted sea trout. It's going to be a limit of 3 fish, and it's got to be between 17 and 23. So a smaller size limit, size limit between those, and less fish to help our population grow. Right now, it is back to 15 to 25 inches, and you can keep 5 again. So that's what our commission voted on. So that's what's back in. So one thing I would recommend to everybody, I always tell everybody this, even if you don't like to hunt or fish, something that is just a great piece of information is our Outdoor Annual app. It just gives a ton of information as far as species you'll find in this area. County, in our county, Cameron County, you'll see a bunch of our regulations as far as fishing and hunting goes. And it has all the bag limits, the size limits, what you can keep of each species, and so on. So, we run into a lot of fishermen and hunters that are taking part in this activity and still don't know what the regulations are. So they're keeping some of our resource without knowing, what I can and cannot keep. We used to give out the paper copies, and we're doing it again. COVID kind of put a stop to that, but we're doing out the paper copies as well. But that app, it downloads so you don't have to have a service to use it. And it's a great tool for, if anybody asks, well, I don't know what I can even do. Here it is. That's what it does. It has all of our regulations in it. Here's a couple examples. So the start of dove season, that gives you the dates, hunter education requirements. It can even direct it to hunter ed classes and boater ed classes. Our price of a fishing license, you can buy fishing licenses, hunting licenses online. You can get your annual bag limits, the size of the keepers, and you see here, this is actually the old 17 to 23. I forgot to correct that. And this right here is going to be now back to 5 and 15 to 25 with one at over 25 inches on the spotted sea trout. And the number of oysters harvested a day. We really don't have that much oystering here. You'll see a lot of oysters, but in this county, in any county, you cannot, there's really no place to oyster around here legally. And that'll actually, you'll have the regulations in the app as well. Again, they all go back to the Texas Administrative Code, which tells us, that's what our commission does to say, I think we need to have the limit of this to this and so on for everything that is regulated by us. So I'll touch a little bit on, I have a few slides on some of the early history of Texas game wardens. I think it's kind of some funny stuff, just how we grew, and some cool old pictures. These are some guys with a seine net, which is, you'll see them called hoop nets and so on. These are now illegal, and they really always have been illegal in the state of Texas. Basically, it's a funnel of netting, and fish swim in there, can't get out, and you catch everything. So it does not discriminate what goes in. So it's catch all, keep all, really. Those are some of the first game wardens there as well, which is kind of cool. So this, I have a couple bullet points on the years as we've gone by. 1861 was the first year that we actually had a game law. I know it's kind of tough on here to ask questions and stuff like that, but does anybody have an idea of what the first game law might have been? And it's okay if nobody does. But it was actually on a 2-year hiatus on hunting bobwhite quail, which is kind of like, that's the first law that was, okay. But hey, it kick-started everything. So first law was in 1861. 1874, we started the first trespass statute protecting enclosed lands from shooting, hunting, fishing, or fouling. So before then, anybody could come on your property and basically do whatever they wanted until somebody decided to take action against it. So this is really where we get our criminal trespass from. 1879 enacted our first general game laws for protecting songbirds, establishing a season for hunting dove and quail. So quite a long time ago, that's when we started hunting dove and quail legally, not illegal. So this might have been legal when this was taken, but this is highly illegal now. And like I said, on the restitution side of things, I pity the fool who shoots that and gets caught with it. So, because it's not going to be cheap. But just a cool piece of history to see that, you know, kind of how things were done before there were game laws. Oops. So in 1883, this is kind of funny, approximately 130 of the 200 counties claim an exemption from all game laws. So they basically said, nah, we're not doing it. We don't want to take part in your silly laws about hunting and fishing. We're going to shoot as many things as we want and take as many things as we want. So in 1895, Texas Fish and Oyster Commission was established, and that was our first Texas Parks and Wildlife. In 1900, the Lacey Act was created, which I'll dive into a little bit more, which is a very important one. That it's a federal act that prohibits the interstate transfer of wildlife in violation of any law. So we'll get into killing deer and bring them across state lines, or any type of game animal or game bird, game fish being brought over illegally. 1903, a 5-year closed season on antelope, mountain sheep, and deer is established. Bag limits set on turkey, quail, and dove. Headlight hunting made illegal. And that's something we still deal with on a yearly basis. We catch a lot of night hunters, which you cannot hunt. White-tailed deer at night, you can't hunt. You can hunt exotics, but again, there's all the regulations that tell us what we can and can't do on that. If there's any questions, feel free. 1907, the Game, Fish, and Oyster Commission established. So basically, they just added I guess, fish and oyster. So they added to it in 1907. This is a pretty cool picture. These are a bunch of ducks. I guess these two guys shot. And to give you a reference for anybody who doesn't know, the limit is 6 total birds in the aggregate. And these guys shot way over 6. And there are, of course, different bird limits as well. For example, pintail, you can only shoot 1 a day. Redheads, you can shoot 2, and then other birds. So it's in the aggregate. So meaning I can shoot 1 pintail a day, 2 redheads, and that's 3 birds toward my aggregate. These guys shot.
Okay, those ducks that you just mentioned, the redheads and pintails, is that like a seasonal thing, a certain time of the year that they can do this?
Correct. Thank you very much for asking that. So duck hunting is a seasonal activity. As with basically any, I won't say any, there are some species that you can hunt year round. This is a federally regulated species too. You need a federal duck stamp in order to hunt ducks. It's going to be basically a late fall into winter activity. You can hunt ducks in about 3 months' time, really, is all you get a year. And there are many regulations within the season as far as how many birds you can shoot, what time of day, and regulations into what you can shoot them with too.
And also, does it apply to where you can shoot them at, or can you just shoot them wherever you see them?
That's another good question. So, hunting in general, which I have another slide too. That's very good reference. Hunting in the state of Texas is very regulated, as about 95% of our land in Texas is privately owned, which is a very large number compared to other states. It's about 3 times as much as you'd find in other states. So when it comes down to it, you need to have permission on whose land you're shooting. So it is very regulated. There are public places to go hunt in Cameron County, out on the bay, in the Arroyo. So there's a few places you can publicly duck hunt. But there are, again, regulations as far as when you can hunt them.
When you say the bay, what do you mean by the bay? At the island where everybody is at, or is that farther like away from the main part of Padre Island? Because if I like this weekend, Sunday, I went to the island. I think I probably saw close, like there's over 1,000 redheads there right now.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
But that doesn't mean
So
that anybody with the license can go shoot one of them there, right? Where we're at
right,
the island,
right.
or they can. Okay.
There, it's I'll say this, it's very tough to find different maps around here, unfortunately, because of U.S. Fish and Wildlife that owns refuge property, and then you
Okay.
have Texas Park and Wildlife State Parks, which is really only one that's near Boca Chica. But then, like for example, in a very popular spot is Rattlesnake Bay. Like right outside of the Arroyo, you'll see a lot of duck hunters there. Behind the Arroyo, which is refuge property. However, tidal waters, you can be in tidal waters and hunt these birds. And again, a lot of it has to do, like the island is pretty much, there's refuge property, there's Padre Island National Seashore as you go up. So
it's off limits there then for hunting?
Yeah, especially because too, it's just so populated. It's not a very ethical place to shoot them anyways.
Okay.
Just because there's so many people there, and a lot of people, hunting is not for everybody. And as hunters, it's our choice, or it's our necessity to be ethical when it comes to, we're not going to go shoot a deer and hold the head outside of our truck bed or anything like that, because it could be offensive to other people that might not share the same values that we have.
Okay.
So similar to, pulling out a duck blind right in the back of, the convention center, anything like that, and shooting ducks back there.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
quite
I
a few
know.
people
There's
have,
a lot of ducks back there.
yeah,
A lot
quite a
of
few people might
details
have
too. So. Okay.
yeah, but nevertheless, kind of a cool picture. Just some history here that everybody talks about the good old days. These guys, it was their good old days for sure, as far as duck hunting is concerned. And thank you for bringing that up as well. So moving forward, I'll rush through some of these because I know there's quite a few years for us. 1909, first hunting licenses are sold. We sold 5,000 our first year, which is just a drop in the bucket compared to what we sell today, which is very good. Federal Migratory Bird Treaty Act started in 1916. 1919, first game wardens are hired. 6 wardens patrolling the entire state. I'm sure it was tough on them. 1925, commission empowered to lease land to create wildlife sanctuaries with restricted hunting. So talking about something similar would be like our U.S. Fish and Wildlife Refuge. And we work with state parks, things like that. 1938, first uniforms. So before this, it was just Joe Schmo that had his personal car that said, I'm a game warden, and here's the law. 1939, 93 game wardens patrolling their personal vehicles and on horseback. We still do have some patrols on horseback, like out in Big Bend and things like that out in West Texas, which is pretty cool. Kind of another cool picture, just game warden with a pistol on his hip. Mr. Law right there with another seine net, probably in his personal vehicle. And then this is a couple old game wardens checking hunters off the side of the road. So moving into some conservation laws, first game warden academy, which is 4 months. And for reference, mine was 8 months. So it's about doubled since then. A lot of good information in there. State furnishes first sedans to game wardens. So we finally got a state ride. 1963, Texas Game and Fish Commission changes names to Texas Parks and Wildlife. So that's been around for a little while now. So then 1965, we were issued 38 specials and gun belts. So not just buying our own anymore at that time. 1971, game wardens acquired Texas peace officer status. So now we are peace officers, just like your Harlingen PD, your Brownsville PD, and so on, but with, as it'll soon become, a state police officer as well. House Bill 1000 prohibits commercial sale of redfish and trout, which is still true, unless there are separate laws to this that allow for commercial fish farms. And Operation Game Thief is established, which Operation Game Thief, for anybody who doesn't know, that is where you can call our Austin headquarters and call and say, hey, I have, I see someone's dragging a deer off a property off a refuge property that we know that shouldn't be happening in the summertime, which is, nobody should be deer hunting then. And you can give information that way. Operation Game Thief also, if we come across things, we try to put it out to all our constituents, and we'll even put rewards on information on things like that for anybody who knows, what happened to a deer off so-and-so's property or this and that, and so on. So it's a great organization that really helps us as game wardens cover more of the state with you all being our eyes when we're not there. Studley game warden. I don't know if I could pull off that uniform with as much swagger as he does. I'll say that. All right, Wildlife Conservation Act, 1983, that was passed, and it granted Texas Parks and Wildlife the authority to manage fish and wildlife resources in all Texas counties. So we said, all right, no more exemptions to any counties that want to do it differently, where it's all or nothing, and we're all going to do it the same. That being said, there are counties, you'll go from county to county and still find that regulations might be different. And that is because our biology team knows exactly what should and shouldn't be taken to keep a healthy population for any species in that county. We're very lucky with our wildlife team on that. So again, previously commissioners' courts would set their own game and fish laws in different counties. So it could be you could shoot 10 deer in one county and no deer in another. So it's just kind of having a all or nothing type laws across the state, kind of hopefully limit poaching from county to county, and overhunting in certain counties, overfishing in certain counties, things like that. So again, no counties could just say, no, I don't want to take part in that. So who owns Texas wildlife? This is a good question. A lot of people sometimes don't realize this, but when it's very close to home for them. So Texas law states that all wild fur-bearing animals, wild birds, and wild fowl existing within the borders of this state are property of the people of the state of Texas. So that's why it's so important for everybody. While it's everybody's property, we still have to do things the correct way, and that is to buy a fishing and a hunting license if we want to take part in that activity. And that's what makes it so important for everybody to do their part, because nobody wants to see somebody take more of their fair share when it's everybody's. Oops. So in addition, state law extends to fish and aquatic life. Same thing as the previous slide. It's everybody's property. The beds in the bottom of our waters, so tidal waters and what is below it. All public fresh water, which shall remain open to the public. So things like state parks, lakes, excuse me. So like I mentioned earlier, this is where it's pretty important. More than 94% of the state is privately owned. I grew up in Texas pretty much my whole life, and going to my wife's home, which is in Rhode Island, and hunting with my father-in-law, who is used to hunting Rhode Island his whole life, that's a very public property state. So hunting up there is extremely different. If you see a deer off the side of the road, you can get out and shoot it and no problem. Down here, very big, very different story. So the first time I went up there, I thought it was definitely a trap, and I was not taking part in any of it. So until I finally realized that Texas just is a very private state when it comes to our land. So like I mentioned earlier, property owners can build a fence, put signs up, purple paint, and let anybody know that they want. This is personal private property, excuse me. Now, that being said, we hear a lot about high fences. We hear different things on that. The wildlife, regardless of a high fence or not, the wildlife is still property of the people of this state. So it is not the landowner's property, even though they put a high fence around their property. So it's kind of tricky there, because you think, well, the property is everybody's, but now it's limited to that private property, because he does have the right to put up a high fence in that property. And so that definitely leads to landowners being a key asset in our conservation, because it is 94% privately owned. So private lands, talking about water management for the animals, if you're going to have high fence, things like that, knowing how to steward the land properly and take care of the resource, the various resources in your own land is very important. Of course, land stewardship, here you see them doing a prescribed burn, which can be a great benefit when you're talking about regrowing a habitat, things like that. Then we get to public lands. So 95% of the state is private lands. That means about 5% of the state is going to be public. And here you see, sometimes it doesn't even seem like 5% of the state is public, because we have things like federal land. Right down here, we have our U.S. Fish and Wildlife Refuge, a lot of that, and you see it constantly growing too. U.S. Fish and Wildlife wants to buy up as much as they can, which can kind of, they want to do right, but they also like to keep people out on certain things. So it can be tough, especially down here with so much land that they own that a lot of their constituents aren't allowed on, which is kind of tough. I understand that. But as you can see, a lot of public land when you see it on a map like that. I'm sorry, a lot of private land when you see it on a map like that, with public land in there too. So legal authority as far as constituents, and then leading up to Texas Parks and Wildlife. So there are city ordinances that Cameron County residents and any residents have to follow, county orders, state statutes, federal laws. So going all the way up to the top as far as, for example, the federal duck stamp, like I mentioned. That is something that you have to have when taking part in duck hunting. So with wildlife freely crossing jurisdictional boundaries, TMN knowledge of certain federal laws is very relevant. So being able to educate somebody on that duck stamp, for example. So getting back to the Lacey Act, which I previously mentioned, which now is a violation of federal law to engage in interstate or international trade involving wildlife, fish, or plants obtained in violation of any state or foreign law. So something that would be a clear violation. You have a barn, a barred owl in your back patio. You trap it, and there's people out there that can turn profit on something like that. Unfortunately, someone in Oklahoma wants to buy it, so they take it to Oklahoma. Very big violation of the Lacey Act there. Additionally, something that was kind of establishes criminal and civil penalties, again with the restitution and a criminal penalty. It's enforced by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Department of Agriculture, U.S. Customs, and then the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. Real quick, I did want to mention, going back to the Lacey Act. Oops. So something that's kind of interesting is you think of owl feathers or any protected game feather or protected animal feathers that were in hats and things like that back in the day, where everything was very very outgoing and lavish, I guess. And so selling those across state lines would actually violate the Lacey Act. So something that's kind of interesting there. So moving on to the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So this was a response to extinction and near extinction of bird species hunted either for sport or for feathers. So talking about those lavish hats, outfits, things like that, that you see a pile of birds there, and those real beautiful feathers that you see in all these ducks, they were hunted just for the feathers. So it's kind of a disappointment to see our resource being taken like that just for, and I understand it happens all the time, but yeah, those birds are definitely beautiful and should be appreciated the right way. So it's US, Canada, Japan, Mexico, and Russia that has taken part. And unlawful to mess with any listed migratory bird part, nest, or egg without a U.S. Fish and Wildlife permit. And there are a lot of birds on that list. All right, so Endangered Species Act of 1973. This provides for conservation of the species endangered or threatened throughout all or a significant portion of their range. So like a whooping crane, in danger of extinction versus threatened, likely to become endangered in the foreseeable future. So there are actually even more, just over 2,000 plant and animal species on that list. And we have a list of our own as well. So now getting into the ethical standard side of things, going back to the TMN Actions, which I'll stand on, which is the laws, the rules and regulations, and ethics, everything that can educate and help moving forward. Some of the implications for Texas Master Naturalists, excuse me. You guys are going to face a lot of different scenarios that we see as well on a daily basis. So understanding some of these things, and this is just a basis of some of the laws and regulations that are out there, is extremely important to educate other outdoorsmen and so on. And that leads me to saying, like I mentioned earlier, always feel free to give us a call. If I don't know something or my partner doesn't know something, we can always find somebody that has an answer. No matter how far up we have to travel for an answer up the chain for that. But there's never feel any doubt to give us a holler, and we can help and just say, oh, you know what, that's actually nothing to worry about there, or that could turn into something, a big case that you guys found. So never hesitate to give us a call on that as well. And then, like I've been saying, educating others to say, no, that's a protected species that a feather that you have there, so better to just leave it alone versus what you can keep. And of course, integrity, your actions will speak louder than your words. So a couple different scenarios. First, I'll just put that one up there. Let's say you're driving over one of the bridges on Highway 48, and you see what here is gillnet. So you see a bunch of floats on the top of the water across the canal there. What's our best plan of action for that? Does anybody have any ideas? Bingo. So thank you, Michelle, and Sherry as well. So definitely call on that. That's something that we do. It can be very dangerous for anybody trying to pull that from the bank. We do it from our boats. We have multiple different boats that we use in this county. Unfortunately, gillnet is lethal. It does not matter what comes across. Once it gets a hold of that gillnet, it's unfortunately usually a goner. So you see them on our beaches a lot. Down by Boca Chica, you'll see them right off the bank there. You'll see a bunch of buoys lined up, and that's gillnet. Gillnet is extremely illegal. You cannot have it within 500 yards of saltwater. And unfortunately, Mexican fishermen will come right out of the Gulf, right out of the mouth of the Rio Grande and put gillnet all over the place. And they like to come on our side of the border to do that. And we are doing our absolute best to always be out there and get this out of our waters as soon as possible, because we want to keep our resource intact for people who want to take it legally and enjoy the resource. So gillnet across the canal, got that one. Wild animal being held. You see some of these on Facebook Marketplace. Like, I had a call on someone had a squirrel for sale in their backyard. And they said it was tamed and they rescued it and it was their pet. But now they needed wanted to sell it off. So any ideas on what to do there? I guess a couple of options. One, call them directly, call us, go over there and buy it and then let it free, or just tell them, no, I'm calling the game warden on you. Best thing to do, again, would be to call us. It's no secret a lot of these are going to be to call a game warden, but best thing to do in that, I've seen it multiple times when I've seen things, and I want to call them up right away and just like, you can't do that. That is not allowed, and that is a wild animal that needs to be wild. But best thing for us to do is to call the game warden and let us know so that we can handle that at our discretion. Question on wildlife rules. This is something I've kind of mentioned before. This would be, it is not everybody. If you're not taking part in a fishing or hunting activity, then of course we'd love everybody to be educated on the rules and regulations, but at least knowing where to find them. If somebody questions you on wildlife rules, you can always give game wardens a call, and we'll be happy to help. There's also the Outdoor Annual app, like I mentioned too. That's a great resource to say, hey, I'm not sure on that, but I know I can find it right here, and it'll give me all the information. So learning our Parks and Wildlife Code and our Outdoor Annual, it's pretty cool because it has pictures and everything too, so you'll know exactly what you're looking at. So that's some possible scenarios on that one. So you're informed of a neighbor of yours is having someone constantly trespass on him the past few nights. You see him going with a vehicle and an ATV, and they're shining lights, and you hear gunshots on their property. Do you guys hunt out or sit out on the property and wait for him to come by? Probably not, especially if they have firearms, anything like that. You don't know who it is. That is stuff that we deal with on a weekly basis down here, especially during hunting season. Criminal trespass, like we said, is very unfortunately very common, but also very illegal. You have to have permission in order to be on somebody else's property, and let alone hunt on somebody else's property. So definitely give us a call on that, and we will handle it to our best ability. Screech owl for sale online. Like I already mentioned, I think going back to the Lacey Act, I kind of touched on that. That violates, depending on where it's going to, it could violate the Lacey Act of, transferring that over interstate boundaries. Also, it is a protected bird, so that is also very illegal. So definitely give us a call on that. Feather found on the ground. It's going to depend on what feather, of course, but having that discretion of knowing, what kind of feather is this? Do I know what it is, or am I guessing? You know, is this something that could be protected and that I shouldn't have, or do I know exactly what it is? So knowing when to say, yeah, that's a Rio Grande turkey feather, or versus whether saying that is an owl feather. Can't have that. Feather collection on display. Depends on the display when it comes to that. Is this for an educational purpose that someone might have a permit for, or not? So it could depend on that. And Texas tortoise on a roadway, as I've seen that multiple times. You could always give us a call on that, or just, of course, make sure it is clear. If you want to make sure that the highway is clear, or whatever roadway you're on, that is first and foremost, making sure your safety is number one. In order to move that tortoise out of the roadway. And a badger skull across the fence. That you can always give us a call on that too. So it's happened. So permitting, like I was saying, is that an educational purpose for that those feathers or not? So there's three main types of permits. There's federal permits, which I'm going to have everything listed here too if you're looking for a permit. State permits, and local. So they vary a lot on what kind of permits we offer for educational purposes or research purposes, things like that. So there's 10 types of Texas Parks and Wildlife permits, like educational display to, for example, RGV does a lot of, they use seine nets out in our bays to do fish surveys. So it's actually helping our resource in the grand scheme of things. So we definitely permit them. They have a permit to do that as well. Education, government, nonprofit, sale and propagation. If you have a permit, you are not allowed to sell anything that you're catching. You'll need 2 recommendation letters to receive a permit, and there is a fee required with a 3-year annual report needed for a permit. So something that's kind of cool about game wardens, I love my job. If you can't tell, some of the stuff I really nerd out on a little bit, but we have what you see there, robust inspection authority. That is your normal police officers are able to conduct traffic stops, welfare checks, things like that. What separates game wardens is that we have inspection authority, which means we can search in any place a fish or wildlife resource may be if we suspect that there's illegal activity. So we can look in coolers, so things like that, where it gives us a little bit more. Nobody, you hear a lot of people say, well, they need a search warrant for that. And yes, to a certain degree we will, but there is inspection authority where we can search any vessel, vehicle, or holding facility, tank, receptacle that might hold a fish or wildlife resource. So that's where our separation comes in with other law enforcement. Additionally, we can, as state peace officers, we can enforce any state law in the state of Texas. So our jurisdiction is the state, not just our county, not just our city. Whereas you see like Brownsville PD, their jurisdiction is Brownsville. Cameron County Sheriffs, their jurisdiction is Cameron County. State game warden is jurisdiction of the state. So I could be driving, for a training up to the Panhandle, and that if I see any a violation, I can still enforce that. We may hold dual commission as deputy federal agents for U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And I think where really our focus comes in is building those relationships with the public and the landowners, especially in a state that has 95% privately owned land. And that's all. So if there are any questions, I know I kind of rushed through that. I just want to be there and get done on time with everything. I apologize if I ran through anything quickly, but feel free to ask any questions. And regardless of anything I covered or anything additional to that.
I have a question.
Yes.
What made you want to become a game warden?
That's a good question. Actually, my dad, when I was in high school, I'm a fishing fanatic. I love to fish and I love to hunt too. But I knew in middle school I wanted to do something in the outdoor industry. I just didn't know what. I had seen college fishing on TV when I was younger, and I was like, well, I'm doing that regardless. And I did. I fished for the University of Texas, and I had a couple outdoor jobs in the industry, but my dad always told me through middle school, you should be, a game warden. You should do something where you're always outside. I was like, yeah, that could be interesting. Let me see. And, it just led every path every job I had kind of led me to this position. So I am extremely thankful to have this job and career. So.
Okay. I'm not from Texas. Are you saying that colleges have a fishing team?
Yes. Kind of, yes. It's kind of funny.
I didn't know that.
It's getting very big. High school fishing is getting very big where teams are starting and you can actually, some colleges are offering scholarships for fishing, which is nuts, but very cool.
That's very cool.
Mm.
I had no concept of that. So
yeah, a lot of different like tournaments throughout the year where you can win scholarship money, as well as there are teams that are offering scholarships to come there. I don't know if UTRGV does have a team, but they're really not hard to start. I think the tough part is just the travel, especially from down here to some of the lakes. Falcon Lake is a great bass fishing lake, and there's tournaments there, but travel can definitely be tough when it's, when you're far away from some of the lakes around. But yeah.
that is so interesting.
Yeah. So very cool. It was cool.
I have a question. When you say call us, like if we want to report something, well, what number are we supposed to call? Because the office is only open from 8 to 5.
Yes. So good question. I would say there's two different resources that you can call. One would be our Operation Game Thief, like I mentioned. Let me see if I can find the number for that real quick, and I'd be happy to give that. So that is always a great one that will always go to our dispatch in Austin, who then, as soon as they hang up with y'all, they get on the phone with us, and we have it right away. So basically, you can choose to leave your information on that, or if you want to leave it anonymous, you can do that too.
So what do we look up exactly? What do we look up?
If you type in to Google Operation Game Thief.
Operation Game Thief?
Yes, and it'll actually.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see that'll be the sign. That'll tell you you're in the right spot. And then there's its own website and things like that it'll have its phone number listed all over the place.
Okay.
Additionally, another resource is if you type in also to your phone Cameron County Game Wardens.
Okay.
There's 7 of us that are actively working in this county, which is very few when it comes down to it, but we're actually pretty staffed compared to some of the other counties. Cameron County is just one of the busiest in the state because we're both on the border and on the coast. So we have plenty of hunting and fishing within. So there is plenty for us to do around here, which keeps us busy. But there's actually a list of each game warden in this county with our phone number. I know some people will just go down the list. We each have our set days off. So if one person doesn't answer, you can always feel free to call. Try to get someone right away if you need to.
Yeah, that's good to know. I mean, I don't know.
And if any, I'll put my number in. I can put my number in the chat afterward. I'm not seeing it right now, but I can put my number in the chat if anybody has. They can feel free to give me a call, and I'm
Yeah,
working.
because like I said, I like, since I do outdoorsy stuff, I do see things that shouldn't be happening, and I'm like, well, what do I do? Who do I let know? And especially when it comes to wildlife. I mean, if I see somebody that I really think is doing something wrong, I mean, I don't hesitate to. I definitely would report them. So.
Yes, and we thank you guys and encourage you guys to do that. I actually got a call today. That was exactly one of those scenarios. Somebody had put trot lines along Game and Bridge, which you cannot do back there. They basically tied it off from the bridges, and from what they said, that's what happened. So we went and investigated and pretty much found what they were talking about, but it also led us to see other violations in the area that we can assist on. So it's not that, by no means are we out to, our job is to gain compliance with our fish and wildlife laws. So
Right.
we're not out to take everybody to jail. We will educate. That's what we first and foremost want to do.
Right. Yeah.
If it also comes down to it that there are people that are violating the law in a severe way, then it might need a citation, leading up to, going up the ladder from there. So.
All right. Perfect.
Hey, I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
I see, is canal fishing like legal or is that like illegal? I see it a lot.
Canal fishing?
It's legal.
Yeah. So there's a ton of canals around here. A lot of them you can fish. Biggest thing is a lot of people just need everybody needs their fishing license beforehand. And I know that to a lot of us that might just be like, well, yeah, but a lot of people go out and don't know that sometimes. So having your fishing license, having the proper fishing license, which will include the different stamps, so a freshwater stamp, a saltwater stamp, knowing which license to get is very important. And that also leads me to one good point. At Academy, Walmart, a lot of people buy their fishing and hunting licenses there. The people that sell the licenses there are not Texas Parks and Wildlife employees. So they're just running the computer. They might not have ever been fully trained on what the license needs. So we check a lot of people and they say, well, I bought my fishing license. Well, no, it shows that you got a hunting license. Well, I just bought it today and I went for fishing. So why would I get a hunting license? 9 times out of 10, it's just someone doesn't know how to work the machines. You can get your license online, or you can get them at our office in Brownsville. And we have, of course, very trained personnel there that know exactly. They do this all day, every day, and they're very, very good at what they do as far as telling you what you need for what and so on. But yes, canal fishing is legal, just knowing the right species that you can keep, length limits, and bag limits.
Interesting.
Cody, sort of a follow-up on that. I know that I've seen a lot of canals that will be posted as private property, off limits, no trespassing. So even though you can fish, like you said, there's a question of, is it legal for me to be there at that canal to do my fishing?
Yes, excellent question and excellent clarification. So just because we see a body of water behind a fence, does that mean we're going to cross it to go fish it because, that's water that I can, tidal waters maybe, or for example, on the floodway, or, different canals, things like that. If there is a fence, I am always going to tell people, and not knowing, of course, where this is, just hypothetically speaking, if there's a fence, if there's a sign, if there's purple paint, that does not give you, or that right there tells you that no, I should not be moving forward in this fishing spot. I'll try another one.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Yeah.
Now, when you're on the island and you're leaving and you're gonna go up the causeway, but before you go off the causeway, you can pull off right before you go up the causeway to the right, right? And there's a little, you can walk on that pier there on the side, on the lower, and I guess the signs are new. I'd never seen them before, and it says no fishing from this area and whatever. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we went over there like 2 weeks ago because there was this, like, supposedly there was this rare duck that was out there in the water. So we went to go find it, to go look for it. And there was like two men there fishing. And I mean, like, we got there, and of course the sign says you can't fish from there, and they're fishing like clear, I'm thinking, okay, I didn't say anything because I'm not going to go confront a man, I don't know what, I might trigger him and he might do something to me. So I just didn't say anything. But what do you do in that scenario? Like, I mean,
You know,
I'm for fishing. Don't think I'm an advocate against fishing, because I grew up at the island and I grew up fishing. My grandparents, had me out there since I was little. So, but I mean, I think it's like, if it's posted there and you shouldn't be doing it, what do you do in that situation? Is that when we call you and like we call somebody and let them know, or we just ignore it and let them keep fishing there? I mean,
yeah, that's a great question. And that bridge has come, or that area has come up to my attention a few times now. Um, I think it's actually been technically off limits for a while, and they did put the signs up. I'm not sure when, but I don't think it was super long ago that they were put up.
right.
But yeah, there are still a lot of fishermen there, and just in general, there are a lot of fishermen. When you see people that like area that's no fishing, there's got to be the one guy that still says, "Well, I can fish here if I want to," and so
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Like going through the whole thing, it's to your discretion. We all know the rules. They're big boys too. They know that they walked right past the sign that said no fishing.
Right.
They might even say, "Yo, I didn't even see the sign," but they saw it.
Of course.
So it is to your discretion as far as how you approach them. If you want to say anything, again, it's our job as outdoorsmen to make sure we follow the rules. But when it comes to enforcing others, you can always give us a call, and we can try to handle that too, because that is our job to do that. And I don't mean to say by any means that you can't tell anybody, hey, I don't know if you saw the sign. There's I saw that there's no fishing here, but unless
Yeah,
they're
well,
around.
what is pretty funny is that there was a lady there with her camera, and she was like, we were taking pictures of the duck, and she's like, oh, what are you all looking at? We're like, oh, there's a common goldeneye out there in the water. Oh, really? And she had her scope and something, and then I said, and then we were talking, and then my friend says, yeah, look at those men fishing over there. They shouldn't even be there. I mean, he says, I'm a fisherman and I respect the laws. I wouldn't be, whatever. That's what he was telling me, one of the other bird guys that was there.
Yeah.
And then she didn't say anything. She was quiet, and then I guess about she was there, taking pictures, and about 15 minutes later, she says, oh, well, we heard that there's really good fish around here. Somebody told us that. And we just kind of looked at her. Well, then she walks over to where the men were, and she was with those men, but we didn't know, and I guess one of them was her husband. And she told him, I guess, that we were talking about them not being allowed to fish there. And then, so they packed up their stuff, and I guess, they probably got worried that we were probably going to say something on them, but.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
I
I can
you think
relate
adults
because
know better, but
exactly. And as people that abide by the law, it is
yeah,
frustrating to see others that don't.
yeah,
Regardless of a fishing law or whatever, it's frustrating to see people throw a can out their window. It drives me insane.
yeah.
And
I hear you. Yeah, and
that's my wife. She's the same. She's even worse than me. She wants to go after everybody, but
yeah, and my bird buddies, they're really big fishermen. I mean, they're diehard fishermen, and so I mean, they respect the laws though, and it's all
yeah,
about. I think that's what it is. Just like you said, some people feel like they're entitled to do it,
unfortunately,
that the
yes.
law doesn't apply to them. So,
Right,
hmm
right.
Thank you, though. Thank you for clarifying that.
Absolutely.
Cody, there was one question posted. If someone were to call 911 or animal control for a wildlife related situation, do they automatically reach out to you all?
So that would depend. If they call 911, they're going to be routed to a local dispatcher. It could eventually get to us, and now, of course, it depends on the call, but it could get to us because as much as we try to have interagency relationships, we try to grow, what we can do to help other agencies and vice versa. So it could, yes. Animal control, there is also, I can appreciate this question too, because there is a good line between animal control and Texas Parks and Wildlife. There's nuisance problems that sometimes animal control is going to have to deal with rather than us. And then there's also things like alligators that we'll deal with too, and might even work hand in hand with animal control and things. So depending on the call, it could come to us. If it is a fish and game question or need, then again, also feel free to call us directly. But unfortunately, I think my best answer would be it could. It could come to us, and we could, of course, take that call too. And I guess I should also specify, if it comes to us and it's more of a question for animal control, we have contact with them too. So all the agencies around here, we try to work together. And if for example, Brownsville PD gets called on a guys fishing illegally, they'll probably call us, and we'll go out there with them or work the case together, something like that.
Any other questions for Cody? I just have a question.
Okay.
I was just going to ask you, is the phone number you were going to post the phone number that I have?
Yes.
For you, Cody? Okay,
Yes.
I'll put it in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Cody, I have a question.
Yes.
Hey, so I came across this online about a law that just passed on the 18th, the Texas dog restraint law.
Yes. Yes.
So
You there? Sorry, I can't hear. We might have lost communication.
Or we may have lost you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There we go.
Can you hear me? It's because I'm on my phone. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, I got you.
And then I'm inside my truck as well. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that law, how far does it reach? Let's say we see like a dog out in the chained up, but out there in the cold, no fence or anything. But does it apply there? I mean, even if there's like a fence, but we still see them chained up.
Yeah, so I think I actually heard the law. I haven't done my due diligence yet to read that in more detail, but I think it would apply as long as they're chained up. And it of course depends on what kind of cover they have around, if they have some sort of shelter, if they have adequate food and water. I'm a huge dog person, and so it definitely hurts me sometimes to be driving around and seeing, even if they have some of the bare minimum that is required, it's still, I want to bring them in and throw them up on the bed when we're sleeping, just like I do my personal dog. But yes, that's a good question. And that's also with animal control too, and your local police agencies as well. So that should be, sometimes with Texas Parks and Wildlife, we cannot enforce, for example, city ordinances. So that'd be on your local PDs as well. But good question. I think it would apply as long as if there's a fence, but if they're chained up to one area and they only have certain they have to have everything met in order for it to be legal. There's like
Yeah,
a-
like that. Yeah, right. Access to shelter, like especially like for the winter, right? And I think
Yeah.
that law passed for all of Texas. I mean, it came from Austin, right? But
Right,
that's
right.
so that it's all over Texas, right?
Right, right. And I just threw in, I shouldn't have said it at that moment, but I just threw that in to say some more city ordinances. That was just a thought in my head. Sorry, but you were correct.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a state
Uh-huh.
rule.
So like let's say because like sometimes we just drive through, right? Like and we can only see like part of the fences that are like in the front view of it of the house. So it's not like we can like go in and like kind of like sneak up to the house and see if they have like everything
Right.
in the backyard for them or anything, right? But if we call like animal control, like they can go in and send somebody to like kind of like take a like look around, right?
Yeah, so
Like
you can
just
call animal
like a
control
quick
to
search
do.
or
Yeah, you can call animal control. It'd be a welfare check for the animal. So to make
or
sure that they have everything that they need.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, that
Okay.
answers my question. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
I just noticed that I had a comment in my own personal text,
Yes.
and it is that killing a red crowned parrot is a Class C misdemeanor under Section 64.002 of the Parks and Wildlife Code, and punishment is a $25 to $500 per bird fine, civil restitution, more fines, and license suspension or revocation.
Yes. So, okay, so that's our Class C citation. I'd have to, again, I'm not familiar with the red crown parrot, and that's just still with my understanding of what's local to down here as well. So I'm apologize for that.
Thank you, Barbara, for letting me know that, because you know we go to the park a lot and to
Yeah.
photography there, and yeah.
Actually, it's Bobby Brown's wife texted me, so I just read the text.
Okay, well,
But
thank you.
thank you, Penny, for sending me that text. Any other questions? Your presentation was fantastic, and
thank you.
I learned a lot.
Well, good.
And I know that the comments in the chat have been very positive, that people really learned a lot and liked it. So, and I don't know why you were nervous. You did a great job. If you can host a TV show,
That's less nerve-wracking than this. Oh man. But I really appreciate everybody, and thank you guys very much for allowing me to speak to you guys, and hopefully it was a slight bit of education in there, and you guys can take something away from it. So.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and thanks for spending your evening with us.
Absolutely. Y'all have a good one. If there's any questions, like I said, feel free to give me a holler.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Cody.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay. I just have a couple screens to show you real quick. You already have the schedule. You know who's next week. Be thinking about a design for your class T-shirt. I don't know if any of you all are artistic, but we would like you to have a shirt that's especially for your class, and there's a few things you need to have on it, but we'll work with you in that respect. But just be thinking about that. And also, now that you've started the class, you officially can start earning AT and volunteer time. There's lots of opportunities. These are just a few of them. Sea Turtle, the Birding Center, Palo Alto, Hugh Ramsey, McAllen Nature Center, Edinburgh Wetlands Valley. There's a plethora of opportunities, partners to volunteer at. There's also special events like Wowie's coming up. There's a seed collection project. I know several people have already volunteered for that to collect ebony seeds. When you're volunteering, your travel time counts. It does not count for AT or for field trips, but when you're volunteering, you start counting for when you leave home, and then when you get back home, as long as you came straight home. Not time for dinner and all that too, but you also can't double dip. You can't volunteer and claim AT at the same time. And unfortunately, for some of you that work at facilities that are, say, if you worked at Valley Nature Center, the time you're working, you cannot count as volunteer time or AT. And for right now, just keep a notebook and keep track of your classes and what. And I took roll too, but write down what you're doing for now, and we will have a session on how to actually enter your time in the system that you registered with. So if you don't have any questions for me, you know how to email me if you have questions, and if not, then class is over. You made it through the first one.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Oh, thank you guys.
Barbara, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I might have missed this. Are we reading any chapters in our book?
Oh, this tonight was, I think, is this Adrian?
Yes.
I think we had maybe your stuff was going to the wrong email, but
No worries.
tonight was the introduction, chapter 3 and chapter 22.
Oh, I didn't even know that either. Okay, let me
Now
write that down.
Hey, you don't have to like it's just like glance at them and read them whenever. We'll be sending out a little quiz. It's more important. They're both important, but paying attention to what the speaker is talking about is really important. So
Chapter
we're going to send
22, you said?
yeah, so the introduction was about the Master Naturalist program. Then chapter 3 was historical naturalists. And what you'll notice when you look through that chapter is they're talking about the whole state of Texas. So what Javier really focused on was the naturalists that are important to this area. So he
All right.
focused on that a lot more. The chapter focuses on the whole state. I think they touch on Berlandier and one other one, but the rest of those, they don't touch on because it's a huge state. The other one that we just covered, the laws and ethics, is chapter 22.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, sure. I'm glad you asked that question.
Hey, Barbara.
Anything else? Yeah.
Hi, it's Amanda.
Hi. Hi, Amanda.
I have a follow-up question about the volunteering opportunities. Do we
Yes.
sign up directly with these organizations, or should we sign up through y'all so you know that we're doing it?
It's an honor system. So
Okay.
you reach and if you have any questions about where to volunteer, but like say I know Trish has already submitted an application to Sea Turtle Inc. to become a volunteer. You reach out to, if you have someplace you want to volunteer, reach out to them, see what they require, and you're good to go.
Okay. Good. So there's no
Track your
template or
time.
anything that we need to get signed and give to you or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
One thing I would add is if you're hoping to volunteer at Uncle Joe's bait shop, some place that's like not a big recognized partner, send us a quick email and say, hey, this is where I want to volunteer. Is it a partner? Is it somebody that it's okay to volunteer? A lot of these big parks, a lot of big sites, if it's part of Texas Parks and Wildlife, involved with nature, the answer is going to be yes. But if you do find a unique opportunity, let us know, because we do have some organizations that we haven't partnered with, and it would be great to establish that relationship because it's somebody that does something really great in your neighborhood, and we just haven't discovered them yet.
Good questions. Anything else? If not, we'll see you.
Hey, Barb.
Yes.
There was a question from Laura that says, so you can start counting AT before you're finished with these classes? Question. I plan to go to the native plant talk at the Birding Center in February.
Yeah. As long as you're, as they don't let you count things you did before you started. But as long as you're in the program and you can count it. Just keep track of it, and like I said, we're going to show you how to record these things in the it's called the VMS system, volunteer management system. But please reach out to us if you have any questions, and we're happy to help you figure out what counts and what doesn't.
Yes, thank you. I see some of the names that you have here of places that we can go to, like to volunteer. So, is that pretty much all the places that you?
No. This is just a few to put on the slide. There's any like cities, county. Like if a city has a like Semite had a butterfly garden, and I was helping with it. That's volunteer time. So this is not nearly. I do have a list that I can send out to the group.
Yeah, that would be great, please, because I don't know a lot of places. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. Have a good evening.
Okay. Very good. Thanks, guys.